Hello, welcome to Getting Your Ducks in a Row. Today I am joined by Neil Wickenden, aka Neil Wick, founder of Property Connex and a man whose journey to purpose-led property investment is as honest as it is inspiring. Neil started out as a creative in the marketing industry, but after experiencing burnout, he pivoted into property investment. Now he works with business professionals, entrepreneurs, and high net worth individuals to help them grow their wealth through smart, ethical property strategies. In this episode, we talk about everything from building portfolios and flipping properties to Neil's Alchemy system for identifying high potential areas in the east of England. We also dive into his community first work in supported housing, showing how development can benefit investors and change lives. This one is full of straight talking advice from someone who's genuinely doing it right. Enjoy. Neil, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, very good, thank you. So for our listeners, this is Neil Wickenden. Neil and I know each other quite well. We're working together at the moment on various sort of projects, and Neil has kindly agreed to come on to the podcast to have a bit of a chat with us. We'll start off, Neil. I know your sort of career trajectory fairly well from our discussions, and it's a very varied career. And you've obviously experienced a lot in that time. If you could just sort of tell our listeners how you went from, in the creative industry, creative director, to now property investor and developer.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say thank you for having me on here. I must admit, when I saw the name of the podcast, I did have a little bit of a chuckle because Ducks in a Row was very poignant for where I am at the moment in my life. I was sort of reflecting on this a couple of days ago. Because everything I've been going through over the last probably 3 or 4 months has all been about alignment and basically pulling everything together. And I look back over my life, and my life did seem very chaotic with lots of different things, doing lots of different elements. But over the last probably 6 months, I've realized that all of that's come together, and I now feel this like alignment where I'm in the right place at the right time. It does seem like a strange journey I've been on. It has been a bit of a roller coaster, going from creative director all the way through learning property and development, and now where I am. But all those skills come to play. They're ready for me. And it's like if I didn't have that design skill, or I didn't have that understanding of electrical engineering, I didn't have this understanding of building my own portfolio, all those components seem irrelevant, separate. But when they get to a point in your life and it all comes together, that's alignment. And I was laughing because Ducks in a Row, normally associated with getting your house in order. But for me, it's like my life in order, like boom, one line. And now I'm literally completely focused. And I've created lots of people around me. I've met some amazing people, you included, where I've got people around me that are very supportive in my vision. And it's a very exciting time. So going back to your original question, it was a strange journey. I mean, I started as an electrical engineer. I got an apprenticeship because I didn't have a chance to go to university. My family wasn't very wealthy. We didn't have that kind of resource. So I went straight into an apprenticeship at 16, and it's learned all my electrical engineering, went to college, got my sort of certificate, and then that was the last I wanted to have anything to do with property. At that point in my life, I went to London and wanted a new career. I wanted to do something creative, one exciting. So I started dabbling and playing and learning how to design. That's a very long story through that, where suddenly got discovered, suddenly got thrown into a very busy environment at 22, 23. I suddenly landed a client, Sony PlayStation, which catapulted me into the mainstream. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I was literally designing at 100 miles an hour, working every hour God sends, loving every minute of it. I mean, I was building a business for myself, but at 22, 23, I really didn't know what I wanted out of life. I had no idea how to structure a company. It was a very fast learning curve, and we were very successful in a number of years. And there came a point in that where I was debating where to go, what to do with the business, what to do. I've got money in the bank, and I was working so much, I really didn't spend anything. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs that go through this where they're spending 6, 7 days a week in their business, continually pouring their life into it because it's their baby. They want it to succeed. Um, and I just decided at that point that I needed to do something different. So I bought some property in the background, and that was my first sort of toe back into the water about doing property back then, like 20, sort of 25, 27, I think.
Where did that come from, Neil? Was that you know you've got a, by the sounds of it, a successful business in a you know creative and very vibrant industry, and you're clearly you're making money, you're doing well. Where did the thought process come from in terms of now I want to have property? Is it like on the side, or how were you hoping to transition back into it? How did that all come?
Well, I can't take credit for it. It wasn't my idea. Um, Someone who's sort of probably 10, 15 years older, Gavin was a bit older. He was an experienced entrepreneur, very successful, and he just sort of took me aside one day and just said, "So here's some key points. Just make sure you've got a backup plan. Um, Put something in place which is in the background. Just put some of this money into an investment like property, or do something with it, just in case." Um, I totally respect him. He was like a mentor, a genius at business. Um, and I did, which was very powerful at the time because um, I could feel as I was going on that I'm like the whole business revolved around me. And that's where I was making a mistake with setting up that business because the entire business was focused on my creativity. And even though we had like 14 staff at one point, it was all funneling into my mind, and um, it was very intense. And then one day I just burnt out. It was honestly, I almost didn't know what to do with myself. Couldn't even get out of bed. I was super sick. Uh, Lost the will to the business. Took a week off to do. Then I just couldn't come back. I just didn't walk into it, which was a bit of a chaotic time. And a lot of the staff stepped up and we took over. And it was in a very transitional time of our business. Yeah, it was basically it came from a friend of mine who was a mentor. He had taken me aside one day, and just basically explained to me the success of a business comes with a cost, and you have to be careful about overstretching. And if you are, then just make sure you diversify a bit. You just put something into an investment separate from your business that's sort of standalone. And so that's when I went out and bought the properties. I bought one property to start with, and then one became two, which was nice. I didn't really think much of it, but later on down the line, as I approached burnout and I was feeling exhausted, and I had to step away from the business, that's when I took that moment where I have the business, I have the income from the property. That was the magical moment. I realized, okay, I don't have to go back to work, and the business will function without me. Um, but I've got the security that if that business goes down, I know I've got the properties. They're sitting there chugging away, got tenants in there producing me money every month. Um, they're not glamorous properties. They're not what I expected to have when you look at a property portfolio, but it was there when I needed it.
And I suppose it allowed you to obviously live, because we all need income for essentials and things like that. But I suppose there was an element of being able to recover from burnout without the added burden of worrying about where money is coming from. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that's what you. The first thing you panic about is what you're going to pay your bills, um, and then you start thinking about your health. If you've got your bills covered, or the bare essentials, and you know you can survive, then you can take some time out and let your mind relax and just regenerate, recover. Um,
How long were you sort of say convalescing, but how long did it take for you to feel like you were in a position where you could sort of carry on working, whether it be in your design business or then, in property?
I mean, that time in my life, I took about 3 or 4 month break. I actually started then from that point onward, started full time with one client. He understood the situation. He basically bought the company from me, and I was absorbed into his global empire. And we're still friends now. Chris is an incredible man, an amazing businessman, and I think that's what's always been in my life. I've had these great mentors that have inspired me, that are super wealthy, super successful, all self-made, and you just can't. When they rock up in a Ferrari, yes, you're a bit gutted, going, "Wow, they got a Ferrari," but then you can see that they have provided so much value for people. They've done so much for the world. They've paid so much tax to be able to afford that. That's far more than I've ever given, and that always leapt me forward.
Motivation, right?
Motivation and inspiration. It's like you see people successful, and it's very easy to sort of um, disregard what the work they put in to get that. And I know sort of entrepreneurialism has a very mixed bag of opinions about it. And but I honestly, I honor all of the entrepreneurial friends that I have and respect their ingenuity and innovation incredibly, because you're creating something out of nothing. And
Absolutely.
that's the magic of what we do as business owners.
Well, this is the thing, Neil. It's like you said there. Everyone sees the results, but no one sees the effort that you put in to achieve those results. And I think that's what sort of skews the perception of entrepreneurship is, to get these kind of results, and whatever your version of success is, whether it's money, whether it's things or purpose or whatever it is, but whatever your version of success is, there is a hell of a lot of work that goes into achieving that.
Absolutely. The overnight success is fallacy. You only see the swan gliding along after 3 years of being an ugly duckling. You're very messy and no one pays any attention. The moment you become successful, your spotlight's on you, but they don't see that, and you have to appreciate that. But that's what inspired me to just keep going. So back with my story, um, that point when I started with Chris, that was a new start for me. I had a lot less stress of running my own company. I was working for somebody else, and that gave me the freedom in the background to start seriously building my property portfolio, uh, which Chris gave me a lot of tips on as well. He appreciated that I was working as a creative director, his global creative director, working in all different cities around the world. But at the same time, I had people back here slowly buying what I decided to buy back then was small, cheap council flats in central London. No one really wanted them back then. This was like 2000. I started in 2005 buying, but by 2010, 2012, we started to really build a lot, and no one really wanted these properties because they were ugly, made of concrete in tower blocks, but they're also solid, rigid. They're easy to renovate. They're governed by the council, so they're always maintained really well. The electrics, the communal areas are always sorted. Suddenly, all these benefits. And when we got, I think we got, there was a, when we got to number 11, that's when we started to start selling them off, because it was just too much to self-manage 11 properties and be renovating and have a full-time job. And that was where the portfolio stuff come from. So then from that point onwards, I moved into full-time property, left Chris, and then moved into working as sort of a project manager on large luxury projects. Became director of that company. Then we moved in and I set up the interiors company, the luxury interior company. We specialised in bespoke finishes for high-end residential and commercial projects. And that was 10 years of my life. And then brings me to pretty much the last 2 years, where I've now moved and evolved that into the business that it is now. which allows me to work with investors, work with clients, work with vendors, develop projects, and create some really, what I think, exciting strategies for creating that win-win strategy for property development, and an environment where not only the investor makes money, but the local community benefits from it. Um, I hate the fact that developers are seen as the evil people when we've got such a population explosion and shortage of housing. We're desperate for housing, so it's important that developers continue to make the most of our land and expand the living space that we as a population are demanding.
That's a great segue into your into what you're doing at the moment, which we'll come on to in a second, because there's you know, having you know, the privilege of working with you at the moment, some of the ways that you're sort of leading from the front and the various different services that you're offering people, and solutions, shall we say, which we'll come on to, is great. It's fantastic. But there's just one thing that I wanted to ask you, and it's something that I've been meaning to ask you when we've had our sort of conversations previously. And you mentioned about a sort of, I say a common theme, but you know, you mentioned Gavin and Chris, right, as your two sort of mentors. Gavin, perhaps in your earlier life, and then Chris as, you know, sort of time has gone on. And one of the things that I think as an entrepreneur, a business owner, it can be quite lonely at times, because the buck ultimately stops with you, and particularly in the early days, it's if you can have a mentor and someone who can, you know, you can bounce things off of and stuff, it really helps. And for people out there that maybe are, you know, starting their business or in the first few years, you know, the test period, as I call it, you know, you have to pass the test, and if you get past the first few years, then you might be all right. But maybe people that are in that sort of in that period, if you like, of their lives, how do you go about sort of finding mentors? You know, what situations do you have to place yourself in? Is it just pure luck? What sort of advice would you give?
I don't think I've ever mentor stalked. I think that's not something I've really done.
Is there an app for that?
I'm sure there will be one day. It would be very interesting. But I mean, there's people that you don't never have met that you see on Instagram or social medias. Alex Morsey is one, but you feel like you know him, and you've got to respect it. He's a leader, really is, and you can. That's one level of mentorship that everyone has access to. So just watch their YouTube, watch the scene. I watch their Instagrams and their videos, see how they sit, how they stand, how do they pose, what do they say. And it's not so much in what they say, it's actually how they present it, which is really, really powerful. So you can then sort of mimic mentors like that, but then actually finding someone to talk to. It's about going to places with like-minded people. Go to spaces where people have the same passions of you. Networking is an obvious example, but just don't go to a networking to pitch. I think that's quite my biggest tip for anyone. When you go to networking, take an interest in people, and then they'll take an interest in you, and then that's just mutual. If you walk in there and you start trying to sell your wares to everybody as that comes near you, you don't like it being done to you, so why do you do it to others? So that's another. Just talk to everybody. And it doesn't have to be in your same business sector. You're trying to find a like-minded person that has that kind of visionary spirit. That it's an itch you just can't quite scratch in the back of your mind, where you know you can do better. You know you've got a purpose that's inside that you can't ignore, and you can't just have a 9-to-5 job. You need to have something that pushes you forward and gets you out in bed in the morning. You will find them. They do stick out like a sore thumb, and you'll gravitate towards them because you have that thing in common. As we all do, we will gravitate to the people that are at our same wavelength, our same frequency. So that's my biggest thing. I mean, I'm lucky, but Gavin and Chris was a client, and We developed a friendship and a business relationship, and a social interaction, because we were in company with each other so much. And I saw him do some phenomenal things with business, and he allowed me the creativity to express that success and make it a visual impact. And that was a really nice, respectful relationship from a CEO who's worth hundreds of millions of pounds to just me and me, but creating my heart out because I wanted his business to do well, and he always made sure I did well. So that's where the win-win's always been with me. It's that I've always seen it that if you try and make other people wealthy, you naturally become wealthy yourself. And
Absolutely.
the more you look after people, the more they look after you. And that might be resonates with the networking thing as well. It's about a give and a take, an exchange of value. It's not always money. It's your time, your attention, um, your help, your focus.
I think that's right, Neil, and I completely agree with that. I think, just start off any sort of interaction, business or personal related, to serve. And if you do that, then money, everything else that you have in your mind that you want will naturally come to you. And I genuinely believe that. And in my sort of endeavours, in business endeavours, and as I say, personal life, I try and keep that at the forefront of my mind. There to serve first, and then the rest will come.
Yeah, and it's also we're all here to make money. We all need money to survive. It's not a dirty subject. We can talk about it, and but as long as we do it in a balanced way, um, I don't want to be coming up to you, rushing up to you, and asking you for £100,000 on a first meeting. You've got to build a relationship, put the effort in, and then we're going to help each other. Um, but we always have to be conscious of our profit line, and we are in business, so everyone's going to be discussing profit lines. It is part of our world, um, and especially in property investment, um, they are high figures, they are big numbers, there is high risk, and that's what it comes with the territory. So we're not afraid to talk about the money and be transparent with all our figures. That's why when we work with a client, it's 100% transparency. These are the figures, and to the uneducated, it can seem overwhelming. And so that's why it's very good to have someone there who just walk you through all the figures and the understanding and the business model in itself.
Yeah, exactly. And so where you are now, the sort of developer investor world in terms of property, this is a business and a service that you're providing off the back of being in design, burnout, having properties that kept you going basically, and you've now built out this business, which is helping other business owners, entrepreneurs, high net worth individuals, people with cash savings sitting in a bank accruing next to nothing in terms of interest. You're now giving these people a vehicle to be able to invest their money, and build their own portfolios, right?
Yeah, so it's I've been around entrepreneurs a lot, and I know um, cash flow, operations, day to day business. They work very hard. You become successful. Um, what's the next step? That's the question that I ask myself, and I know most people do as well. They don't just go on holiday for a year because that's not the style of person they are. That's not what got them there. They need a new challenge. And everyone recognises that property is a good investment. It's the fundamental commodity of most of countries, UK especially. The most expensive thing you'll probably ever buy is your house. It's the biggest commodity in the country. So it's a natural thing for people to invest in, but it can be very daunting. It's very complicated, and when it goes wrong, it costs a lot. So yes, it's a great investment, and I highly recommend it. And it saved my life. I would say it gave me a lifeline. That's not the only reason. It's there because it can make a lot of money and it can be very successful, and it can work in the background. It doesn't need day-to-day monitoring. It can work in the background, as I like to call it. It's like your second engine for your business. You're predominantly spending 90% of your day on your own business. Property, if done correctly, can just be sat as a sideline and just provide steady income and a steady growth in capital appreciation, all going up in time, outweighing inflation and the cost of living crisis. And it's there and it grows and it never stops. And I know we've gone through a bumpy time in the last year and a half with the market. And if people just look at that snapshot, yes, it would look like the property is unstable. But if you look at the past 10 years or you look at the past 50 years, you can naturally see that there's been a consistent growth in property ever since it started. And typically, its property has doubled its value every 10 years so far. I mean, and yes, we've been through quite a few different political dramas, and there's some changes in the law. But we've been through a lot of this before. I remember when stamp duty was introduced, and it was chaotic. And then they introduced many different changes to landlord rights and information and stuff requirements and legislation. This consistently goes on. Not something to just determine that property is dead. It will always be there. It's one of the basic commodities we need of life.
Well, it's such a huge part of the economy, isn't it? I mean, property, construction, obviously, which supports property, right? The more houses are built, the more there is. You know, there's a housing demand, population's growing, so it's always been and continues to be a cornerstone of the economy. And to your point, you mentioned there, and this is something that we've discussed, and I hear this a lot from friends, family, you know, just people I know. I had a very what should we say, elongated venture into property investment a good few years ago, and I was obviously involved with a few friends, and we decided to invest in property and, you know, start flipping and all the rest of it. And you're right, it's hard when you don't know what you're doing. We had some capital. This was around 2008, 2009, when property prices had dropped because we had a crash. So, you know, we thought, we've got some spare cash, no point in having it in the bank. Let's you know, jump on the bandwagon and see if we can do some property flipping. And it's hard when you don't know what you're doing, because it's multifaceted, right? One, you need to know the areas, and I know that you focus on sort of Norfolk and Suffolk as well, and I want to come on to that because I know there's some untapped potential there, and I'd like you to talk about that. But just the key point is finding the right places to do it, where there is potential and it's not completely smothered by everyone else. Then it's all of the sort of legal issues and the process. That's before you've even bought the bloody thing and have started renovating it. Once you've bought it, you then need to renovate it. So it's knowing the tradespeople, having the contact, and all the rest of it, organising that, which is, I mean, I've had some work done at home, you know, which I've loosely project managed, and I've sent my missus in when the builders haven't been doing the right thing, but. Yeah. But it's hard, and doing that, you know, at scale is really, really difficult. And then once you've done all of that, you've renovated it to a spec that's respectable. You haven't, well, we did anyway. You go over budget inevitably, but you know, you're within budget. You've done all of that. Now you need to get it back on the market. Now you need to find a buyer. It's really, really difficult. And when you've got a day job, or you're running your own business or whatever, when you've got something else that takes up 95% of your time, regardless of how hard you're prepared to work and the hours you're prepared to work, because everyone else works during the day, you know, you might have time at night, but you can't do anything at night because everyone else is you know, with their family. So it's really difficult to manage. And the reason I mention that is, I want, if you can, just give us a bit of an idea for, obviously your experience helps, but what a sort of journey with a client looks like.
I mean, you said it there. It's a full-time job. And running a building project, buying a property, 24/7. And if you've ever bought your own house, you know that how stressful it can be, and things take a lot longer than you expected. Not only from legals and purchasing, but delivery on builders, finding reliable builders, because you're doing it as a one-off. You haven't systemized anything. You haven't standardized your relationships. You haven't got. You can't benefit from regular work with people. So doing it from scratch, from standing still to completed project is very hard the first time. What we do is that we have established relationships with the whole chain, and we've navigated that chain many times, and we've had lots of very variety of different projects over that time, which have had very unusual problems. So I've done a lot with excavation basements. We've done stuff with loft conversions. We've done massive extensions, house building, renovation all the way from the ground up, from brick to complete finished project. So in that diversity of different projects, we've seen pretty much everything that can go wrong. Pretty much, I say. Not, I can't say we go everything, but you can walk into a project and you're already 5 steps ahead, knowing what's going on, avoiding any kind of delays because you know how long the DPC is going to take to when we have to fit it. Or we have a split water main. We know the kind of process we've got to go through to get it fixed quickly, get it back online, get the house. These things happen day to day, and they happen in every person's job. You always have crises and things go wrong and bits. But in your office environment, when things go wrong, you've already got systems set up to process them, do them, deal with them, handle them. It's in your head, it's in your familiar space. You do it. That's where we are. This is just our office. We go into a property, we assess it. We have a full criteria system which will basically assess the area, assess the demographic of that area, which you can see what our end client is going to be. So when we're buying in an area, we know what the end user is going to be like. We know what their patterns are. Where do they go to work? How do they move around? What's their transport systems like? Then we start going into analysing, obviously, the financial area, what's going on in the area, comparables of what's sold previously, what we think is selling right now, what's just been going to contract, what's going into sales contract, and we can monitor those. We oversee them. We break them down into a pound per square meter process, and then we can calculate exactly what predictions we have for the next 8-12 months, depending on the length of the project. So there's a science to it. And then there's the processes that are all built in for the purchasing. Legal teams are familiar with it. The accounting team's ready to go. We just give them a call and it goes through smoothly. We set up the SPV. We do obviously set things up from a tax perspective. We've got the right person, the right advisors there you can connect with. So the whole system, the whole step from A, B, C is all mapped out for you. And we're there to guide you along that path. And we do 90% of the work. We do all the legwork. You may sign on some dotted lines, and we'll always keep all the figures transparent. We brief you on every stage, but you're not running down to site every day. Yeah, you don't have to get involved on the day-to-day operations, from the dealing with the legal matters, dealing with the purchase, dealing with the renovation, or even dealing with the tenants. We've got an end-to-end solution that does it for you. If you want to come down to site and you want to paint a wall, you're welcome. It's still your project. You still get involved, and we can adjust that level of involvement as you require. If you live in a different country or in the other side of the country, it makes no difference. We provide that service. I'm a big on communication, as you probably tell. So I like to speak to the investor or the client every 2 to 3 days, keeping up to date. Where are we going with this? What's happening with this project? What's happening here? That means we build relationships, strong relationships. You feel more confident and you understand the process and you learn along the way as well, which is really, really important.
Yeah.
So you watching it happen and seeing all the steps means you're completely educated. And when you come to do it again, you could do it on your own, or you still have us there, but you know the process. We can do it faster, more efficiently. I mean, when we bring on a new client, if they don't have much property experience, I will take the time to explain all the terminology, how various things like bridging works, what an EPC is, what all the different elements and terminology you'll find in this industry that can be quite daunting to an investor. Um, I'll take that time. I will explain it, and I'll go through it. I spend as much time. I love talking about property, and it's you need to feel confident all the way through, and I think that's part of the journey. Um, isn't one of education, not only of investment. It's learning as you go, and having confidence in the project that it's not only being delivered as you require on time, but it's also going to make a profit.
Yeah, and these investments and the clients you're working with, are these one-off flips? So buying property, renovating it, selling it for a profit, or are you helping people sort of build out a portfolio, or is it a mixture of the two, depending on what the client's goals are?
When a client comes to us, they normally go, "We want to buy one property." But what I do on the first stage is create what I call a game plan. I need to know what your goals are. Why are you buying a property? What's going on? Why are you getting a property investment? And people have various different goals, incentives. Do they want to give up their day job? Do they want to retire early? Does their business need a second income stream? Do they want to diversify into something else? There's lots of different reasons why people get into investment. So once I've identified those goals, I can then work out like a 3-year plan on what you need to buy, what kind of money it needs to make, what kind of things are we diversifying your investment with. So are we doing buy to lets with flips? Are we doing maybe we'll do a loan in a high interest loan here to a project, and then we'll put some of your money on this project, some of your money on a different project. There's lots of different ways that I can recommend different projects. So what I do with the game plan is basically to give a structure of how the next 3 years could progress, where you could place your money, what's going to make the best returns, and what's going to get you to your end goal. And we structure it at the beginning so we know where we're going. If you just want to build cash nest egg, then I would recommend that we do a certain number of flips together. So we build up that money and we roll it up. But if you're looking for long-term wealth, then you need to start creating another additional income stream, building a portfolio that has a regular income which goes on and on and on continually. So there's various different options for different people. So realistically, it's about understanding the investor, what their goals are, and then providing a plan for how we get to their goals.
Okay. What's the Alchemy system?
It's basically what we talked about earlier. It's an assessment protocol that I create. It's a step-by-step guide which I go through when I'm looking at an area to see if it's going to be financially viable. Are we going to get good properties there? Because there's a lot of properties to review, and if you sit on Rightmove, you can sit there for days just scrolling and scrolling, and you'll find the odd deal, and you go through the process, and then it'll be sold, or it goes to auction and goes for twice the price, and it's become a very frustrating process. So what we like to do is target specific areas to see if we can create a direct-to-vendor connection, which is a variety of different things like leafleting, postering, contacting local sources, contacting local people, or just literally social media for that area. But we need to know what area we're targeting. So from the Alchemy system, it basically allows me to assess who's in that area. Are there a majority of owners or landlords, or the rental, or is it council? What type of people would live there? What is the major demographic? Are they students? Are they professionals? And then you can go through, look at the kind of properties that are available, and do they match up with your demographic? So if they're matching with your demographic and they're going to be profitable, then this is a good target area. And it's a process to go through that we've developed over time. because it's very difficult to go into a city and determine where the good areas and the bad areas are. We have it here in Norwich. We have a place which is quite considerably is very cheap. One main road divides it, and on the other side of the road is Eton, one of the most expensive parts of Norwich. And the house prices are in the millions, when the house prices the other side of the road are worth 200,000-300,000. This is just to do with the economics of a way a town is built, and it's unless you know the area very well, you can end up buying in the wrong area, expecting to get £1 million house for 200,000. You think you've made a great deal, but you're on the wrong side of the street.
Yeah.
And it's only local knowledge that tends to govern you that. My system allows us to do a more precise, accurate assessment of the area remotely. So I can do the system on any part of the country and assess a local area and see is it viable for us to actually investigate, search, and source properties in that area. Obviously, spend all the time doing the viability studies and the financial models to determine, and then do the viewing, do the assessment, get it ready for to present to investors. That's a long process. So we have to commit time. So we don't want to waste time on areas that are just not going to work. So that's why this just exists.
So Norfolk and Suffolk, obviously I know you live in Norwich and you know the area, but you've mentioned to me in the past that it's they're areas that are sort of have untapped potential, and they're often overlooked by other, investors, developers that are doing the type of thing that you're doing, albeit there aren't many. Why Norfolk and Suffolk? Like, apart from obviously the it makes geographical sense for you because you have as you say, the knowledge of the local area. You're closer to the developments, which means you can be more hands-on. But why do you think there is sort of untapped potential there?
I call it the undiscovered county. Most people don't know where it is. I grew up here, and after that I moved to London and came back. And it wasn't until I came back did I notice the massive infrastructure change that happened in the space of 10, 15 years. A huge new ring road gone around the city. The commuting routes by train and by road have been vastly improved. So commuting to London from Norwich or Norfolk is only 90 minutes by train. As London expands and central London prices push populations out, they've got to go somewhere. So the surrounding areas are where we look at. And in the vast budget, there's going to be a considerable deregulation of the green and grey belt. So you can see an opportunity evolving. I focused on Norfolk and specifically Norwich because of the beautiful countryside, because of the escapism or the escape to the country vibe this place has. It's a very beautiful city. It's barely a city. It's a very small place. It's heaped in history and culturally has diversity. It has a very strong student population, a very large teaching hospitals with a very low population. That's set to change.
Yeah.
And I think the area has been nominated for sort of immigrants being put into the town, into housing here. We're going to be using up space here to create specific housing. There is obviously a growing demand from the rental market as businesses move into the centre, into the surrounding areas. A lot of the surrounding areas are being built up into industrial sites to house new companies, because it's on now a distribution centre. It's easy to distribute from Norfolk across the country. So all of these things coming together to go, this is a great area. And I believe, like from Cambridgeshire north up to Peterborough, it's starting to get expensive again, but it doesn't have that diversity that we have here in Norfolk, which is the coastline, the heritage of the town, the countryside, the farming, and obviously the the Norfolk Broads, which is a great tourist attraction. And tourism is thriving in this area anyway. So things like service accommodation do amazingly well. And a growing industry here. I think something like 32 million people visited last year. It's a staggering amount of people that come to an area that really only has about 250,000 people live here.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think as well, Neil, in terms of uh, why geographically it could be appealing, as you say, it's in relative close proximity to London. And also, I think a factor is, and I've sort of started to see that only in my own sort of circle, but where we had COVID, people work from home, businesses realised that, or some businesses did fall, but you know, businesses that survived realised that actually I don't need to have a bum on a seat from 9 to 5. I can trust my staff to work from home. And that sort of shackle that London was for work, office workers, people that worked in London, the shackle that London was that meant you had to live within the M25 has now been removed. And people now are thinking, do you know what? Why am I still living in, paying one through the nose, council tax, property prices, etc., to live within the M25 in a busy area, which I, may not prefer or whatever. I may prefer a more rural setting. I don't have to be here now. I go into the office twice a week. It's 90 minutes on a train from Norwich, and it's a beautiful part of the world. And I think people are starting to see that now and realise that. And places like Norwich offer that in abundance. So I can see why it's appealing as well to people that perhaps want to move out, but don't want to sort of half-arse it and move to, Essex. They want to go somewhere that's rural, rich heritage, and is away from, properly away from London. Because as you say, London is expanding. And it won't be long before it moves outside of the M25, if you like. But yeah, I can definitely see that. And I can see why in time, it could grow into a big city with lots of property potential there.
Yeah, I'm very proud of the Norwich City Council because we have an area in the centre of Norwich which is called Anglia Square, and from when we were kids, it was always the like superstore. It had all the shops. It's an old 60s tower block. It's the most ugliest thing in the world, and it was pretty much condemned about 3 or 4 years ago, and the site came up for sale for a mere £8 million, if we can get raise that. Um, the developers came in, they put in these great plans for skyscrapers to go in that were going to be the same height as the cathedral, and the council blocked it. And I think it was the correct thing to do. And yes, they could have squeezed out 30,000 flats, I think, out of was probably about a mile square area. But it would have destroyed the skyline. It would have been an eyesore. And I believe that they did the right thing because even though it's growing, there's a big emphasis here on maintaining that country life feel.
Well,
And
what makes it attractive?
that's what it is. We're in danger of overpopulating it just to get houses set up and destroy the cultural reason why people come here in the first place. It is fresh air. We have got open spaces. You have got a clear sky at night, which doesn't have a huge light pollution issue, where you can see the Milky Way from out just outside where you go outside the perimeter of Norwich. You can see the skies lit up with stars. That's the magical thing why a lot of people come here to visit, and then they come and visit, and then they want to stay. And I'm probably the same. I've come back here think it would be a temporary measure, and I've fallen back in love with the place. I actually love what's going on around here, and I see the growth. And I see that people are being conscientious about the growth. Uh, there are some amazing buildings here that are being renovated or can be renovated, waiting for renovation. Um, there's potential here, but it's just outside of that um, price band that exists around of central London. Even though house prices in central London are very, very high, still if you start going out even to zone 6, they're still really high. And you still have to go a considerable way out before it starts tailing off. And I have friends that bought houses for 350,000, one bedroom apartment, and here for 350,000, you get a three-bedroom, four-bedroom house with half an acre. They're comparable. When you start looking at the quality of the life and the size of the property and the space that you have here for the price you pay in central London, it sort of becomes a no-brainer.
Exactly, and also as well, I mean, for those that not to sort of labour this point, but the fact that it is so close to London really makes it that much more appealing because there almost is no excuse really. You know, people that as I say, often were tied to London for various reasons, and even if you are, it's not that far away. And it's rare, I think. I mean, there aren't many places dotted around that close to London that still offer that fantastic value that you've just mentioned there of 350 grand for a 3-4 bed house with a parcel of land or whatever. It's unusual to find that now.
Yeah, and it it's like a hidden country. People don't experience it, and when people come here, I had some friends come up here last weekend, and I showed them around central Norwich, and they were amazed. It was so nice walking around showing off your own city, um, because they were like gobsmacked at how many cathedrals and how many churches, pubs, and the giant cathedral. I mean, there's a pub for every day of the year here. I haven't actually checked that's true.
I'm sold.
That's true. So yeah, it's. I think there's a great potential here um, for quality of life. We're not going to be building tower blocks, not building blocks of flats. I'm not that kind of developer. I don't want that. I like house renovations. I like creating extra space, and I also like helping the community, which, like you say, is very dear to my heart.
That community piece, Neil, that's something I wanted to sort of touch on with you because I know that you are very, very community focused. And for the quintessential property developer investor, that's quite unusual, I would say. Could you just, and I appreciate there may be some information that you can't divulge at the moment because I know you're doing a lot of work in the sort of community space, and I know there are various things going on that we discussed that aren't public knowledge and you can't say. So, if there's a way for you to sort of give us a bit of an insight into what you're doing with the community without breaching any sort of NDAs or whatever that you've got going on, that'd be great.
It's actually definitely cloak and dagger like that. Um, uh, for the past year, I've been very interested in social housing. It started with social housing, but then I sort of looked a bit closer and sort of found supportive care and specialized supportive care. Now, these are facilities for long-term care, uh, people with disabilities that require specific needs. Um, and this it hit me in the heart when I started seeing this as a potential and seeing the demand. Because patients obviously stay in hospital, but hospital beds are very valuable. They can't stay there long. So they get moved into supportive care units where they have 24-hour or 12-hour care by nurses. They're monitored and it keeps them through recovery. Or if it's a long-term illness or condition, they they have that 24-hour care in what is a facility that provides hospital level care. This is very. I've been very interested in this, and we've been very privileged to have recently purchased one and a care facility. We're retrofitting it and basically getting it ready for a care provider. And we're now into talks about doing two or three more. That's about as much as I can say. Uh, there is a huge demand because it's not only long-term care; it's learning disabilities, facilities for all sorts of different level care needs is there, and they need bespoke um, fit outs. They need bespoke spaces that are customized to their needs. And having just spent 10 years doing bespoke interiors for luxury houses, he just felt like such a natural fit for me to have an opportunity to do these kind of projects. And to make them special, I mean, I think we spoke about this. I had this dream that we're going to have a facility where we're going to unveil it, and the kids are going to go running in, and it's going to be, oh my God, it's the most amazing experience. And because the space is coloured to how they want the colours, they want the paintings, it's set out specifically for their needs. Because it is a hospital, but it doesn't need to feel like a hospital. It needs to be there for their family and their visitors and their day-to-day life. So it has an outside space. They can go in the garden. You're improving the quality of life of people as well as doing property development and making good returns for investors. And it is good returns, but it's also sort of heartfelt returns. So I believe this is a trajectory for our company. I've got an amazing team that are behind us, and yes, we're sort of rolling that out over the next 24 months, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I know that was slightly cheeky of me because I know there's a lot of it you can't talk about, but I think it's important for people to hear that side to you in your business because, as I say, often when people, when you think of your quintessential property developer investor, they're often you often think of money hungry people who don't really care about anyone else other than lining their pockets. But what you're doing and lining the pockets of their clients, but what you're doing is really giving back and I've seen the plans, I understand what's going on, and it's fantastic. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
No, I don't keep. It's not a secret that I want to be involved in the space and I want to promote this space and help grow it around the country. We're still cutting our teeth on it, and that's why it's a little bit. It's early days for us, but there's the determination with me and the team to make this happen, and it's going to happen. I have no doubt at all that this is going to happen over the next 24 months. And as I said, everyone involved has all committed to it. And it's going to be an amazing ride, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we move on to the final subject now, which is I just want to sort of get your views on the future of sort of property, really. The angle being sort of property prices and where you see demand and where you see prices going. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like they've stagnated over the past 5 years since COVID, and maybe even dipped slightly.
Yeah, it has. There's no denying that. But then you look at the sort of political, the global arena, and it's not surprising. We've had wars, we've had changing governments, we've had chaos in Europe. We're recovering from Brexit and COVID. The economy is still recovering, and we're worried that the house prices have just stabilised. They haven't like crashed. There hasn't been a massive people haven't lost millions and millions of pounds. We went through that 10 years ago, and we recovered. So yes, there's been a lull in the market, but it's not surprising considering what we've gone through. What is a great sign? Well, any great entrepreneur that has been super successful has always spotted when there's an opportunity. When house prices are low, it's the time to buy. When the house prices are high, then you sell. It's basic maths. The property prices are really low now. Interest rates are starting to fall. What's about to happen? Either everyone's going to get on the bandwagon and going to start buying properties, and this is what's going to happen. Yes, it's
Which will, presumably will drive, that's going to drive demand, drive prices up. I mean, when you combine that as well with a demand for housing, I mean, how does that does it offset it? Like if there is more housing available, does it mean that there's less competition, therefore prices won't rise as much? I mean, I appreciate we're sort of this crystal ball stuff, but where do you see that panning out?
It's just, I mean, it's the basic point. We've got the population is increasing. We know there's a national shortage of around 3 million houses, and the government has expectations of producing 250 to 350 per year, 250,000 houses per year. So we're nowhere near keeping up with the population growth. That's basics. So where are all these people going to come? Uh, the I mean, it's a bit of a touchy subject, but immigration is allowing people into the country. That is increasing. These are people. I don't take a political stance on if they should or shouldn't. I know that they're people and they need housing. So they've got to go somewhere, and that needs to be. That's an expectation that realistically every developer on the planet or on the country needs to be involved with. It needs us all to be working towards solving the housing shortage. There are many, many houses, thousands of houses stood empty, uh, unlivable, which are ready for developers to go in there and modernize and help fill that shortage. There's areas that need to have new houses built. There's a space in this industry from all of us, and coming together and us all working together to meet this shortage is what's important. That's what's happening. We need roofs over people's heads. Is the profit margins going to be the same? I can't predict that. I am an advocate for creative strategies. Not every house can be done the same way. In some areas, flips do really, really well. In others, buy-to-lets do great. We're doing stuff with assisted sales. So we help the homeowner and we work as a partner with the homeowner to renovate their house and get it up to its top level so they can sell it. And many, many, many more creative strategies. When they come to play and you've got all of those strategies in your head, you can pretty much turn any property market into a success. That's why I spend thousands and thousands of pounds on my education. And I'm continually educating on where the industry is and what's happening with new evolving strategies. I think the last time we were all together, I think they had like 128 different strategies available. Not all of them work in not every area. There isn't a one size fits all. And this is why I work with my clients. It has to be hands-on. It has to be a bespoke service, because wherever you select, whatever type of properties you're buying, you need to have that expertise to put the correct strategy on, execute it in a correct timeline, manage your budgets and deliver correctly. And then you've got a successful property that can go out and help the population, first-time buyers, people downsizing, people upsizing, and people wanting to move out of town. We've got social housing, we've got supportive care, we've got all these demands that are there. But I think the media tends to speculate on just the house prices as the governor on, is it a successful market? Successful market is what? It's just housing. Is food a successful market? Yes, because we need food. And yes, housing is a successful market. Maybe the profit margins will vary, but we are still the fundamental commodity of the country.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, Neil. And as we said earlier, we touched on it earlier, you know, it's the cornerstone of the economy, has been and will continue to be. As you say, people need housing, and that's I can't see that changing. I don't think that's ever going to change. Neil, thank you very much for joining us on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. No doubt we'll probably speak either later on today or tomorrow, but having you here and being and sort of giving you a bit of a platform to share your knowledge and share what you're doing for people, investors, clients, but also for the community. It's been a real joy to hear and to talk to you about. So thank you very much for that.
Absolute, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.